There's something about the way you make me feel inside. I'm counting down the days till we fly away, heading to the sun, only you and me. Don't wanna waste another day being stuck here in this place. No, wanna hold your hand in mine, watch the sunset in your eyes. Baby, I want us to act like we are 22 right now. Just let go, lose control, play songs on the radio too loud. This could be magical. Wow, wow. This could be magical. Wow, wow. To escape, and here we are, driving narrow streets in a rusty car, leading to the sea. Think we're getting close. We should take a pic, baby, strike a pose. I remember every day that I spent right here with you. Yeah, you are the one who makes me feel as good as I do. Baby, I want us to act like we are 22 right now. Just let go, lose control, play songs on the radio too loud. This could be magical. Wow, wow. This could be magical. Wow, wow.
Morning, friends. I'm Jennifer. I'm a dog trainer, and today I want to talk about buttons, of all things. You probably have seen, at this point, somewhere online, videos of dogs pressing buttons to communicate with their people with words. It's become quite a fad, and it's really bringing up some interesting questions about dogs and communication and our relationships with them, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's the start of a lot of discovery, and I think that's a really good thing. Hey, Bravo Pup Dog Training, welcome. Beyond 280. So, all right, and so you've probably seen this. Maybe you haven't, but if you have, you may have even be one of these people who's gone so far as to go out and purchase your own buttons for your dog to try and communicate. I did. I fell prey to this. I admit it. I'm curious. So I'll show you what I've got here. These are what the buttons look like. Little plastic thing, battery in the bottom. They can press down on the button and it'll say something like, outside. Sound quality is not great on these little speakers, I'll tell you. But that says outside. So yeah, you can buy these really cheap online and play around with your dog. It'll be an interesting experiment, to say the least. But it's an easy button, yes. But used in a really specific way with dogs, and it's really interesting. So I have been doing a little bit of reading, and I was really excited to learn that I think that this all started with a woman, a speech pathologist named Christina Hunger, who wanted to try and communicate in a new way with her dog. So she developed using principles that she had learned about human communication, developed a system of communicating with her dog, and she ended up writing a book about this whole process, and it came out pretty recently, and I just started reading it. I'm only a couple chapters in, but I'm loving hearing her perspective, and yeah, just her perspective given her background, and then being able to use this with her dog. It's really pretty fascinating. Now, that's not to say that it's the end all be all. Like I said, I think this is really the start of something. It's really, it's just bringing up a ton of questions, and I'm excited to learn the answers from people who are doing research into this. So the thing is, it has started in the scientific community. It's caused quite a stir because it's asking a lot of questions about the capabilities, the linguistic capabilities of dogs or of other species. And this is kind of a hot topic always, and its answers are still pretty unclear about questions like, what do other species have language? Certainly, all species communicate, and verbal language is just one very specific form of communication, right? But do other species have language? That question, you may get a different answer depending on the species you're asking about, of course, but also who you ask and the definition of language that they're using. And I, in particular, find this really, really interesting because I love languages. I always have. Before, like 2 careers ago, no, when I was still in school, when I was going to college, like I was originally declared a French major, and I've taken years of French and years of Spanish and even a semester of Arabic because I love language so much. I think it's really fascinating. Obviously, I didn't end up going down that road, but it's sort of like it's just a special interest of mine in addition to dogs and behavior. So I find this stuff really interesting. And yeah, so these questions are coming up about, what are dogs? What are other species capable of when it comes to language? And the thing is, today, we don't have those answers. This has not been studied nearly enough, definitely not in dogs. You may, some examples of other species that people, there's some debate. We talk about dolphins having language. We talk about bees having language. And I'm not here to say they do or they don't. I'm certainly not an expert in those species, and not even an expert in language, just interested. But we have questions, and it's exciting. So let's see, Bravo, I have several that swear. You have buttons that swear or dogs that swear? I do think you can have a lot of fun with these. And if you're just playing around and you're just being silly, no harm done. I'm really excited about what's happening in the research community when it comes to this. I have some skepticism too, and that's kind of what I'm here to talk to you about today is like, where could this go and where could this go wrong, too, because there are important considerations when we're talking about caring for our animals. Yeah, both very funny, Sandy. Beyond 280. So Dizzy can talk now. I love that question because it's really at the heart of the topic today. He can't talk with words because this is new in our household, and the only, we've got 4 buttons and the only one we've really tried to use is the outside button so far. And I'll tell you what happened. So it didn't exactly go the way I thought. I named it outside. We put it near the back door where we let him to go out to potty or to play. And I tried to train him to use it the way you would teach a dog to use bells hanging by the door. It has a specific meaning. It means open the door. I want to go outside. And a couple times he used it spontaneously, but for the most part, he already had a very robust history of letting us know he had to go outside by just standing by the back door, because he knew that bit of communication, that body language, was enough to get our attention to let him outside. I'm imparting some some maybe thoughts to him that who knows if he had or not. But the way I kind of see it is like, if you don't need to do an extra thing to get your point across, why would you? You know? He's like, this is extraneous. I don't need it. You know what I'm asking already because I'm standing here. So it didn't really stick. We kept at it for maybe like a month, or maybe a little more than that, but he's like, I just don't need it. Let's see. My wife really wants the collar from Up. We want our dogs to be like Doug the dog. Ooh, it's been a while since I've seen Up. But if I remember correctly, it's speaker worn on the collar, and like it translates Doug's thoughts into human speech. Do I have that right? Because and this is, I think, is why it's why we all find it pretty interesting, is because if you've got a dog, like, who of us wouldn't want our dogs to be able to communicate in human words that we understand, with a lot more specificity and nuance, and like who doesn't want to be able to read their dog's mind, right? Like we all want that. That's amazing. Like, or it would be amazing. Yeah. Hey Jesse, welcome. Squirrel. Yeah, exactly. And I think they do a really good job when they make, movies like that, where any movies where we give these mythical dogs a way to speak in our language, right? I think they do a really good job. I mean, we for the most part, we understand what dogs want and what dogs need, and that it kind of brings up a point here today, is that, like, if we understand these things, do we need to do the extra thing? Do we need the extraneous ways for them to tell us what we already know? I'm gonna kind of come back to that point, because I want to talk a little bit about this book. So the book that I started, again, author is Christina Hunger, who taught her dog Stella to use these buttons to communicate in a unique way. It's called How Stella Learned to Talk. And I'm only like maybe 2 chapters in, and I'll tell you, so far I really like it. I like her way of writing. It's very clear, and it's very descriptive and emotional, and it is, especially if you're like weepy like me, like she tells some stories about human children that are so touching and inspiring, and I like chapter 1. I'm crying already. Okay. Like, yeah, so I'm excited to see where this goes. She's gonna get into like the process of teaching Stella how to use the buttons, and it's interesting. I'm already like there's a couple things where she's pushing my buttons a little bit, when she starts talking about teaching Stella, this particular dog, no. And I don't recommend that teaching dogs no, because as with the understanding that we have today, dogs are not capable of understanding all of the nuance that goes into the words the way that humans understand them. It's not that they can't hear a word and understand a meaning attached to it. It's just that they don't have, there's so much more attached to a simple word when we humans learn them and use them. And a word like no, just those little 2 letters. Some, there are people do teach their dogs the word no, or at least they think they do. But when I teach a dog a cue, you know, oh, I didn't know it did that. What was that? Anyway, when I teach a dog a word like outside, I'm very conscious that in order for it to be useful in our communication with each other, it has to have a very specific meaning. Like I said, for us, outside means open the door so I can go outside. Who knows why he wants to go outside? Usually either to potty or lay in the sun or run around, who knows? But the specific meaning is, I need you to open the door now. And and so when we add other words, when we talk about teaching them language, using our verbal language, there's some pitfalls. And a word like no is very amorphous, and you can teach a dog that no means something, but a lot of times that's not what happens. When we teach them no, it just means it doesn't give a dog a specific thing to do. It doesn't tell them the right thing. It doesn't, and so I'm already like a little bit. There's a couple things where I'm like in the book. I'm like, oh, like let's not move into this really gray area. So I have got my skepticism, but I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying it so far. So, but that's my 2 chapters in opinion on the book. And Spicy Panda Creations. It's also probably entertaining for us to use these buttons, and that's the thing. I think at this stage, with what we know now, it mostly is for our entertainment. Now, some of the videos, if you like are scrolling through the web and you see these videos, they can look really convincing, and that's what gets people like myself pretty excited. It's like, oh my gosh, my dog is telling me this, or who knows. Some of the other words attached to the buttons that I've seen some of these people use are food or play or ball or mom or please, and like it's to read through the comments, you'd think like we add our own interpretation especially when we start adding combinations of words. When the dogs go and they press like different buttons and they're very selective, because it'll be a whole grid. Like the dog will have, who knows, anywhere from 4 to, I don't know, 30 buttons. And when the dog like presses one and goes around to the corner and presses this one, and they're specifically selecting these ones, these words, it's like it really looks like they know what they're saying, and they know what they're communicating. The thing is, when I watch these videos, I see all of the different ways that those words, that combination and that order of words could be interpreted. And when that interpretation, that's happening in our heads. That's still not telling us what the dog was actually meaning to communicate. So there's still all of this room for miscommunication. And it's a little like mostly for our entertainment, right? It can be very, very convincing, like I said, but there's so much room for misinterpretation. And also the way that people respond in some of these videos, I don't, with my trainer hat on, with my behavior analysis hat on, I'm like, if you're not responding to those words, to those buttons, to that phrase, whatever it is, in a way that like helps the dog understand that those buttons do indeed mean what you thought they meant. If you're not responding in that certain way, like they're going to lose their meaning very quickly. So I just don't know. I'm full of questions. And yeah, beyond 280, we are very prone to personifying our dogs, to look for the human meaning in what they are saying, right? And that's not always a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing. And that's why as we as a species, as a questioning community, as we go down this path, take this journey of learning together, it's really important to keep that in mind. But I've already, Christina in the book, she's already brought up a couple things that really have me thinking. And one of these things is she presents a concept that's new to me, but in her work with humans, they talk about presumed competence. And as a concept, especially as a concept with humans, I love it. I think it's really beautiful. And what it means is that when you're working with a human, especially maybe a child, with verbal limitations, they don't communicate using a full, robust vocabulary. It could be that it's just their age. It could be a developmental thing. But when a child is unable to communicate really clearly with you with their words, instead of assuming, well, they just can't, or they don't have whatever's going on internally, assuming that they don't have the capabilities, we presume that they do, it's just not coming out verbally. And when you go into interactions with that mindset, it opens doors, it creates more possibilities, it lifts ceilings off of a human who might otherwise be very, very limited. And I can't, you'll just have to go get the book to read the story that she tells about one of her clients. But it's really, I can see how this is a very good thing. If I don't even know how to say this, because I can't say it as beautifully as she did. But yeah, oftentimes, even among our own species, I mean, heck, I'm a perfect example right here and right now. Like, there's stuff going on in here, and I'm finding it difficult to express it to you in an eloquent way with my words. So maybe just assume I'm really smart. No, but I think that when a person is not capable of fully forming sentences at all, or maybe even words at all, if we just put that person in a corner and say, well, oh, they can't, they're just stupid, or they can't communicate, or you're really going to limit them. You're going to limit your relationship with them, and I think you're limiting yourself as well. And so going into interactions like that with this presumed competence, you're really gonna you're gonna reach, as a person who wants to communicate with another person. If you say, okay, they can't tell me what they want or need the way that I normally hear and understand things. Let's try other things. You're gonna open your own mind for greater creativity, and you're gonna find ways to help them get their points across. And I think it's beautiful. I think that open-mindedness, that what it is essentially optimism and open-mindedness and maybe even kindness. And it's in relationships, and when it, oh gosh, you guys know, it's communication, kindness, relationships, like, oh, that stuff really, really gets me, especially when we try and we do this in ways that are maybe unconventional or require more of us, because like, what is life about if not growth? And so, yeah, I just think the whole presumed competence, really, really beautiful, especially when it comes to humans. It can apply to our dogs as well, right? If we go into our interactions with our dogs presuming that they can understand a lot, or they can achieve a lot, they can learn a lot, you're going to help them do those things. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, perhaps. And you can do really cool things with it. And you and your dog and your relationship together going to be better off for it. I think in that sense, it's really, really beautiful. Now, slight detour here. I want to talk about science and the process of science, starts with curiosity and questions and the belief in possibility, right? That is awesome, and that's how it starts, and that you need that to do the work to answer those questions and research and find out. Now, the scientific process is amazing because it gives us a way to find truth. That's at its core, that is what science is. It's a way of knowing truth about the world, and it guides us with these parameters that keep us from doing what humans are really good at doing, which is reaching and and making assumptions and getting way off track. We humans are very good at that, and science lights a path. It's like, here, work within these parameters and you will find answers. Love science. Science is great. But that thing that keeps us on a path to truth is skepticism. And skepticism can go wrong as well, but I think it's also really a beautiful thing. I think you have to have that balance. If you want answers, you've got to have that optimism and you have to have the skepticism. Both are very, very important. And yeah, it's just important to remember that. And that really comes into play when we are investigating animals or other humans, because what we're really talking about is another mind. And there is not really any direct way to study what is happening in another mind. We can study brains, but man, as far as thoughts and feelings go, it's such a... I want to be very careful when we're talking about it, because again, when there's a little crack or a little hole open for any assuming interpretation, that's where we start to get a little bit unclear. It's just not a topic that we can study directly. Doesn't mean it's not worth studying, doesn't mean it's not really interesting, but I think it's an area where it's beneficial to everybody involved to be really careful about what we claim is true. Let's see, Spicy Panda, I just want to get to your comment here. Good point. Human communication is very complicated, not only with words, but also tone and context, implied meanings, etc., all the nonverbal cues. Exactly. And even between humans, among humans, they say maybe only 7-ish% of our communication is verbal, which leaves the rest of it, all of it. We are communicating in all sorts of different ways all the time, even without using our words. And that alone is just, that kind of blows my mind. But it's true. We communicate in many, many other ways other than our words. So, yeah. Now, working with another species. Talking about human to human is one thing, because we, as a human, myself, as yourself, you have a much better understanding of what it's like to be a human than what it's like to be a dog, right? Doesn't mean we can read other people's minds, and it definitely means we make a lot of assumptions about what other people's experience is. And it doesn't mean that we're always wrong, but there's really no way to know if you're right without them telling you. But also people lie, and and also people misunderstand themselves. And so how do you? It's a very hairy topic. Now, let alone trying to understand the mind of another species, right? I feel like I'm going down the rabbit hole of communication, and it makes me realize I really just need a simple, concrete system to communicate with my dog. Okay, and I love that you said that, because I'm treading very lightly today, and as I'm talking about this, because, or at least I'm trying to, I want to, because in the rest of my work with dogs, and teaching people how to train your dogs and communicate with your dogs, that's what I want. I want to, I mean, this sounds derogatory, but it's not. I want to dumb it down. I want to simplify it, to keep it as almost as limited as possible, because with limitation comes clarity. Or at least that's the goal when I'm saying I want to simplify it, or when I say I want to dumb it down, because it's so, I mean, yeah, as hopefully this is, as I'm saying right now, as hopefully this is clear, there is just, with communication of any kind, there's so much room for things to go astray and miscommunication. And so it's hard enough for us to communicate with our dogs, without giving them more to do. Not to say that you shouldn't, or that we couldn't learn a lot, or that it couldn't be really cool. But most of us don't. If you're already like, I just want him to understand XYZ. One thing, two things. Don't give them more to do. Don't overwhelm yourself, and don't confuse your dog either, you know. But there is that potential when we're adding fun little crazy things like this. Clarity is not to be underrated. Clarity, simplicity is a really beautiful thing. That said, teach it using these things, using buttons, to give dogs a way to say words and communicate with a little bit more, you know, grammar and syntax and possibly nuance that they weren't capable of using with the tools they've already got, their body language, could open a lot of doors. It could help us learn a lot, and that could be really, really cool. But we already see the pitfalls, when we are attributing human capabilities to dogs that we don't know, we're not sure that they have, or that we don't think that they have. A big example that I hear a lot, and I therefore end up talking about a lot, is the human capacity to feel guilt. This is a huge question, huge buzzword in the dog world today, is, can dogs feel guilt? Because to look at the interwebs again, there's so, I mean, and it breaks my heart, but there's so many videos of dogs looking guilty, the guilty look. We hear it a lot. The videos with dogs with signs hanging around their neck saying, like, I did a bad thing, and the dog looks, you know, usually head lowered, eyes maybe cast aside, ears low and back, the guilty look, yeah? And that is an interpretation. It doesn't mean that dogs do feel guilt. In fact, for the most part, how I and my colleagues interpret that look is more, that's fear. That's a dog trying to communicate, don't hurt me, don't scare me, like you are looking in such a way that I'm a little bit afraid that you might do something bad to me. It doesn't mean necessarily at all that they connected their behavior with your upset feelings. And it's really, really, so I don't even go there. I mean, yeah, I've probably said before, and I want to stick with that dogs don't feel guilt. But here's the thing. We don't know for sure, but it's not a helpful concept. You know, it's, even if they do, the things that assumption leads us to do damages our relationship with our dogs. So, you know, it's that's what I mean when I say that assuming dogs have certain capacities can go down a very bad road, right? If we assume that they feel guilt, that also assumes that they understand right and wrong, which means that they have some concept of morality. All of these things are human concepts. And I am nowhere near stepping into the assumption that the dogs have that. Because one, I really, really, really don't think they do. But two, what does that mean? How does that change how you're going to interact with them? If you assume that they understood something was wrong, if they understood that, I don't know, chewing up your couch cushions was a bad thing to do and they're a bad dog, like, then what? Are you gonna punish them for it? Like, that doesn't help your relationship. It doesn't help your dog not to do it again. I mean, trust me, if you're a little unsure about what I'm saying, I was about to say like, well, try it out. I mean, go ahead with that assumption, but let's not do that. Let's just look back into the past, because I assume that this is how you've been operating. Has it led to your dog chewing couch cushions less? It's unlikely that in your absence, you coming home and punishing a dog is going to help. It's not. So yeah. Ooh, I'm getting deep into the guilt thing because I think it really does damage to the dog's psyche and to your relationship. But I bring it up today just to use it as an example of how assuming capabilities that they don't have can lead us astray. But like I said, good to have optimism. We want to ask the questions. We want to do the research. We want to learn. But what are the results of that? It's good to have the skepticism to keep in mind. Like, if you don't have those answers, what does operating with that assumption lead you to do? Is that result good or bad? I don't know. So this presumed competence that she talks about, like I said, it's helpful so long as it's used to help another to learn, to grow, to communicate, to achieve. If we use it to help them, it's a wonderful thing. Beautiful, awesome, great. Like, that's really, really cool. But it's not a good thing if it is used to shift blame or responsibility, or if we raise our expectations beyond what they are capable of meeting. Heck, in your own human-to-human relationships, what do too high expectations lead to? Disappointment, resentment, like just a lot of negativity. Having too high of expectations, that's gonna cause damage. That's gonna cause a rift in relationships. Now, being open to possibility, wonderful. Too high expectations, and that's where I'm like, I want to be careful with this presumed competence concept. Let's see, Spicy Panda April says, another good book to read to take away deep dive into this topic is the book How Emotions Are Made. Oh, good. There's an entire chapter about animals, which is very fitting for what we were talking about. So, did you finish it? This is one of my favorite books I've ever read. I think it's kind of brilliant. Lisa Feldman Barrett. It's, if you're interested at all in understanding emotions, it's a novel, unique way of looking at emotions, and I think it could shift a lot of fields that deal with emotions. Psychology and it's juicy, and it's kind of mind blowing. It's been a while since I read it, so I keep saying I'm going to read it again. But yeah, no, it's a good one. Definitely check it out. How Emotions Are Made. I totally forgot there's a chapter about animals, but yeah, I think, and she may mention this in the book, but yeah, like, emotions evolved way before any capabilities for communication. So I think every living thing feels, but are we all capable of feeling the same things? Like how we define feelings, like even something simple such as anger or sadness, like how we define those. This book will rock your world. It's really cool. Thanks April for bringing that up. So yeah. Now feelings are one thing. Like we can look at functional brain scans of different species in different situations, and based on the patterns of activity, we can make assumptions like, oh, maybe dogs are feeling love when this happens because that's the way that our brain looks when we're feeling such and such a way. We can gather data and we can make assumptions that way, but interpreting feelings and then interpreting feelings from language is another thing, right? Like we said, all species communicate. We have to. There's really no other way to operate in the world. If you can't communicate with other other individuals from your species, you're probably not going to survive very long. All species communicate, but not all species have language. At least that's my understanding today. We may learn, who knows? But we mentioned body language. That's huge, and that's the main one that I rely on when it comes to communicating with our dogs. But they communicate in other ways with each other too, right? I mean, they scent marking. They pee on that bush. Guess what? That's communication to other dogs in the area. Chemical communication, but communication nonetheless. And other ways too. I mean, gosh, there's so many ways of communicating. You can't, and it gets me all excited. I'm totally not an expert, and I can't speak intelligibly about all the other ways that they communicate. But know that it's there, and it's not always ways that we can see, and studying it will really help us understand them better, which helps us treat them better, and that's why it's worth knowing. But let's come back to the buttons. Yeah. So like Beyond 280 brought up earlier, it would be like we would all love if our dogs could just talk to us. Just tell me what's going on, right? That would simplify things. Oh, your back's hurting? Great, we'll go to the vet. I didn't know. Oh, your water bowl's empty. Thanks for pointing that out. If you could just tell me, like how many, use your words. How many of us were told that when we were kids? Like, just use your words instead of just throwing a tantrum, right? But not everybody is capable of using their words. And guess what? Our dogs are not either. And I think that just because, like, teaching them in the way, so the book that I'm reading, the How Stella Learned to Talk, that book, I'm really curious. I've got like 6 hours left of it, but I'm gonna finish it today. And I'm really curious to see her perspective, because it's not just one word, one thing. She tries to, I believe this is where it's going to go. She's trying to teach the dog to use combinations of words to get across a wider variety of ideas. And this is cool. It could be cool. If we're interpreting it correctly, if we find that we're interpreting this communication correctly, could be amazing for anybody who wanted to do the work of teaching your dog a whole new system of grammar to communicate with you in new ways that we didn't previously think possible. Could be really cool. But here's the thing. If we find, and we don't know for sure, I'm willing to, like, that's where we're at today. If we find that they're not communicating in as robust a way as we believed, if we find that we were misinterpreting the buttons, if we find that our dogs just don't they just don't understand when we talk to them, because I mean, they can't talk to us with words the way that we talk to them, but that doesn't mean they're not communicating. But if we find that when we talk to them in complete sentences or, whatever, that they really, it's all going over the head. I mean, that is the assumption I operate with today. I don't think that's a sad thing at all. It might make some people sad to think like, oh, like, we tend to treat them like they're these little humans that live, they're just furry humans that live in our houses, but they understand us. They look at us with those eyes, and they really look like they understand. If we find that they really don't, I don't think that's a sad thing at all. I think that, one, if I could go through life and not have all the stuff going on in my head that I do, I think I'd be happier. Like, if I could let's just simplify everything, and take away all of the stuff that comes along with the verbal thoughts that I can have, because I'm human. I think that would be amazing. I think if that's what dogs are experiencing, good for them. That's why they're probably so happy. It's like, yeah, maybe ignorance is bliss. I believe that. I mean, I think we really, humans really do experience a lot more strife than maybe we would if we didn't have all of the mental capabilities that we do. So, if that's the case for dogs, good for them. But secondly, I don't want to discount what dogs are capable of. They, like we've already said, they do communicate. They communicate with us very well. For the most part, we really do. We understand their basic needs, and we meet them as best we can. We do a great job. They do a great job of letting us know. And I don't think like that's a really cool thing in and of itself. I think that they communicate with the tools that they come into the world with, their body language, and it's not necessarily simple, but like the simplicity that it has, like, I think it's beautiful. I think that the ways, like, even without any background of like any like academic like learning into this, most of us can read dogs fairly well. And I think that speaks to their skill and their ability, and I think that's beautiful. And it doesn't, if they can't talk in words, like, who cares? They do a great job already. But the other reason that I'm erring on the side of skepticism when it comes to these novel, cool, like exciting ideas like buttons, is that and I really don't think this is going to happen. Like, I don't think there will ever be a day where every new dog owner, like, you get sent home with your new set of buttons. Now teach your, like that's not going to be like a foundational thing in every dog household. Like, it's just, I don't think that's ever going to be a thing. But as it grows in popularity, what I worry about, and maybe this is not, maybe I'm worrying needlessly, but because dogs do communicate with us really, really well with their bodies, and if we're going to make an effort, if we put that effort into learning the language they're already speaking, then this is a bit redundant. Like, they communicate pretty well with us with like I said, no extra effort on our part. We understand a lot of what they're saying, but I think it's the iceberg thing, right? If we're understanding this much, and it gets us pretty far, there's all of the rest of the iceberg below the surface that, with a little bit of learning on our part, we can, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we understand so much more that they're saying. And why teach them to speak our language if we can learn theirs? It, in a sense, it's like making them, I mean, I know that it's effort on our part too, but it's like making them learn something extra when we could have just learned to speak what they're already the language they're already speaking, their bodies. And so the worry is that like we're shifting responsibility. It's like, okay, you learn to speak the words that I understand. When they're so beautiful. Dogs are so eloquent, and they're always communicating 100% of the time with their bodies. And it can tell us a lot. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, with my level of understanding, my level of education and experience working with dogs today, I feel like that's enough. Like not that I'm not going to continue learning, because I love learning, and I think that you should always keep an open mind. And again, that's why I'm kind of like, oh, let's ask questions, let's learn, let's try, let's growth mindset, right? But I make a really, really heavy effort to listen. And listening is the communication skill that we don't practice enough. We as humans, oh yeah, we want to learn a language. We want to learn foreign languages. We want to be talking. We want to be saying things all the time. I mean, heck, I'm sitting here saying things to you for the last hour, and like, why? I don't know why. But we definitely put much more of an emphasis on saying than we do on listening, and we forget that there's this huge piece of communication skills called communication. I mean, that's a category, right? There's a bunch of skills within listening that we don't practice enough as a people. We have to learn to listen better. We have to learn to listen more. We have to learn to zip it. Watch and listen and take the time to understand. And I am saying this about our interhuman communication, as well as if we want to understand our dogs, if we want to communicate with them, huge piece of the puzzle is listening to what they're already saying without no buttons involved. They are saying a ton to you. And it's not just open the door, put food in my bowl. They're saying a lot of other things, and it can really help us. Listening is the hardest skill for human communication. And I don't think I probably will not live to see the day when I don't feel like we need more, on a broad scale, more education about listening. Like as from day one, we always when we talk about training, we always talk about like training starts during your very, very first interaction with your dog. Training is happening all of the time. Learning is because training is learning. Learning is happening all of the time. 100% of your interactions with your dog. It's not just when you pull the treats out. And it's so people who are like, I brought my 8-week-old puppy home, like, I guess we're going to start training at 16 weeks or at 6 months, or, like, no, because your dog is learning every minute during those other 4 months or however many, learning is happening all the time because communication is happening all the time. And if you're not listening that whole time, your dog is learning to communicate with someone who doesn't listen to them. And how does that feel? Have you had a conversation with someone who just doesn't listen to you? Like, that's ick. It's not building a good foundation, and foundation comes first, right? So your first interactions are so important, so crucial. It's why, like, it kills me that people don't hire a trainer until they're having problems, right? Hire the trainer early. Get the foundation right, because then you'll avoid problems later. So anyway, I'm gonna zip it and go somewhere and start listening better right now. But just to wrap it up, I'll say again that this is really exciting. These buttons and the questions that they are raising about ways in which our dogs are capable of communicating with us could be really cool. We could end up finding some really interesting answers about them, and who doesn't want to learn more about their dogs, right? Like, I assume that's why you're here. But they are already really brilliant at communicating with us with the tools on their bodies without the need for this. So you don't have to wait for the answers for this. You can play around, by all means. Go ahead, have fun. I don't think it's gonna do any harm. But even without the cool gadgets, your dog, it's really exciting already to just learn about your dog's body language and the ways that they're communicating with you already in their own language. That is a beautiful thing, and that's really cool. So you don't have to wait for the answers. It's already really exciting things happening in your own house with you and your dog. So go today. Go try listening. What is your dog telling you today that maybe you didn't see before? If you guys have any anecdotes or stories about something that you realize your dog was saying to you that kind of like you light bulb moment for you, shed some light on, oh my gosh, my dog's been saying this. I would love to hear stories like that. I would love to share your stories if you wanna share them with me, because training is all about communication, and our relationships are all about communication, and so that's at the core of everything. This is so cool. So anyway, I'll leave it there, but yeah, send me your stories if you got them. Otherwise, have fun communicating with your dog. It's a beautiful thing. All right, I will see you guys later. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you next time. All right, bye.